Simple Kitchen. I'm Chef Amy Symington. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about make ahead, comfy, cozy comfort foods that are also a good part of an anti-cancer diet. Okay, so we're just going to jump right in. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you're focusing on whole plant-based foods as much as possible. So fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, and good quality plant-based protein. And the reason why we focus on plant-based foods is because they're very high in fiber, antioxidants, and they themselves are also functional foods, meaning that they contain nutrients, but they also contain health benefits. So for example, tomatoes contain an antioxidant called lycopene that may help to reduce the risk of prostate cancer. So tomatoes all have all sorts of things in terms of nutrients in them, but they're also a functional food providing health benefits as well. So we focus on plant-based foods because they contain all sorts of health benefits. And the ones that we generally try to focus on every single day include orange vegetables, so things like squash, carrots, pumpkin, all those orange kind of fall vegetables that you would find at this time of year. And then we'd focus on red vegetables, so beets, radicchio, red onion, red cabbage, that sort of stuff, so red veggies. Cruciferous vegetables would be the third one, so all the stinky vegetables, so broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, arugula also is classified as a cruciferous vegetable. And then greens, 100% green veggies, get them into you as much as possible. And so those are the ones that we focus on the most for an anti-inflammatory diet, but also for an anti-cancer diet. So try to get those into you as much as possible. Other ones that are good to include in a daily diet, but also are kind of lend themselves to comfort food, is allium vegetables, so things like garlic and onions. Those are also a really good component of an anti-cancer diet. Okay, so on the menu today, we're going to be making all sorts of comfy, cozy, stodgy, stick to your ribs comfort food for the winter. And so this is all the recipes that we're doing not only are good for the winter months, but also good to make ahead, so you're setting yourself up for success, healthy success for the week ahead. Yeah, and you can make the recipes, I should say, all the recipes come from the Long Table Cookbook, Plant-Based Recipes for Optimal Health. It's a collaboration between myself, Gilda's Club Greater Toronto, and George Brown College, and all of the author proceeds from the cookbook go to help the social, emotional, and nutritional programming at Gilda's Club Greater Toronto. So all the recipes from the book today, you can find them there, and all the stuff we're using today are kind of seasonal, local, and again, obviously focusing on those comfort foods that we always crave in the fall and winter months. Okay, so we're just gonna hop right into it. The first one we're going to be doing is from the book. It's called a strawberry hazelnut streusel cake. But because it is now November, we're going to be using cranberries in lieu of strawberries. So this recipe in particular is really great. I call it the all year round cake because you can just substitute the fruit for seasonal fruit. So instead of strawberries, we're going to be using cranberries. So jump right in. So all the ingredients we're using whole plant-based foods as much as possible. Firstly, we'll start with some whole grain spelt flour. So you really want to get those whole grains into you as much as possible. And that's because whole grains contain bran, they still have the bran intact, which contains all the goodies. It contains the antioxidants, the B vitamins, the prebiotics, and the fiber, of course. So get that into you. So we're going to do dry first, and then we'll do the wet. So most of my baking recipes, usually you do the dry first, and then the wet, and then you mix them together and pop them in the oven, and it's pretty easy peasy. This one you can make, we're going to be making a bundt cake, but you could do it in just, a regular 9x9, or you could do it as muffins too if you wanted to, save it for snacks or breakfast. Okay, so whole grain spelt flour. I like spelt too because it's kind of, I call it the gateway to the whole grain flours. It's kind of has a texture of white flour, but it's got whole grains in it. Okay, and then we've got 3 tablespoons of ground flax. That's going to hold it together. Flax also contains omega-3 fatty acids, which are a really great component of an anti-cancer diet, a healthy fat. Cinnamon, Also a good component of an anti-cancer diet, very high in antioxidants. And then we have, so that was about 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. This is baking soda, baking powder, and salt, so about 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. The baking soda is what's going to make it rise because we're going to be adding apple cider vinegar in there, and it's will react. Okay, so that's all the dry, and so we whisk, whisk, whisk. This is a great recipe to get kids involved in too because they can do the whisking and the measuring. Okay, wonderful. Got that. Okay, and now I'm just going to make a little well in the center and add all of my wet ingredients, and then I'll incorporate. Okay, so we have a 1/2 cup of grapeseed oil. Grapeseed oil is a good oil to bake with. It has a neutral flavor. Also has a high smoke point, meaning it doesn't start to smoke or become carcinogenic at higher temperatures. About 1/3 cup of maple syrup. And the recipe actually calls for smashed bananas. I'm just going to use applesauce. I didn't have any ripe bananas on hand, so I'm going to use applesauce. So it's about 1 cup of pureed fruit, sweet fruit, that's going to add a sweetness, but also obviously fiber and antioxidants. Apple cider vinegar, tablespoon, and then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. You can omit that if a vanilla is not accessible to you or it's too expensive, which it is right now. And then we've got 1/2 cup of water. So you could add a milk there too instead of the water if you wanted, or not if you don't have any milk on hand. Then just use water like I did. Okay, great. And then we're going to mix together. Get this recipe out of the way because I know it. Not very many recipes I do, but I make this cake a lot. Okay. Great. So mix, mix, mix. And you can kind of see the baking soda and the apple cider vinegar react. The apple cider vinegar and baking soda also act as a binder, as does obviously the flax, the ground flax. You want to make sure that it's ground. So that's why we don't have to use eggs in this, and it will still rise. And you're getting that extra added benefit of the omega-3 fatty acids, which is a very important component of an anti-cancer diet. You want to make sure you're balancing your omega-3 fatty acids to your omega-6s. So omega-3s can be found in things like flax, walnuts, chia seeds, hemp seeds, walnut oil. And then omega-6s are found in things, oftentimes processed fast foods. That's where we find them the most, but also in things like meat. But then you can get healthier ones like sunflower oil. You're just wanting to make sure that you're getting more of the omega-3s and not as much of the omega-6s. Okay. Great. Done. Good there. Okay, now I have a greased bundt pan. You can use, again, as I said, other things if you'd like. The 9x9 cake pan works. Sorry, 9x12 is what I meant to say. 9x12 would work. Or you could do muffins too, so this would make about 12 muffins. Okay, now I've got my garnish, which I've got cranberries, and I've got chopped dates. And I actually just used kitchen scissors to snip those up. It's a lot easier to do. And then I've got some hazelnuts as well, which we'll put on the top. Because it's a bundt cake, and we'll flip it over, I'm going to put a few things on the very bottom, so that when you do flip it over, it's kind of on the top, which is always nice. So we'll sprinkle some dates and some cranberries. This is such a nice cake for holiday gatherings. Obviously, we're in COVID times right now, so your gatherings would have to be socially appropriate. But this is a really nice one. Maybe you could even be a little porch fairy and make a bunch of these for friends and family members that you're not able to, be with, that you would like to be with, and you can drop them off or have someone make it for you. Okay, so I've done that, and now we're going to put the cake batter into the bundt pan. So again, I've greased this bundt pan with coconut oil. You can use whatever you have on hand. Coconut oil kind of gives it a buttery finish, but whatever you happen to have on hand that has a higher smoke point. So again, as I said, grapeseed oil, you could also use avocado oil. Coconut oil has a high smoke point as well. Great, and then I'm actually going to put the rest of the garnish on the bottom here. And so this recipe calls for making kind of a glaze as well. I'm going to omit it this time. You don't have to make the glaze, it's just kind of an extra special thing to do. But this time I'm just going to be serving it, kind of for breakfast and for snacks. But if it was for, a nice dinner, I would definitely make the glaze. Okay, cool. And then we'll put our hazelnuts as well. Yum. Okay, cool. Now, get this stuff out of the way. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to toss this in the oven right away. So this is going into an oven that's 375 degrees for about 35 minutes. Okay, so in she goes. And you'll actually get to see the real finished product. Okay, so next up, while that's baking, we're going to be doing our spicy roasted edamame. One of my favorite snacks, really easy to make. Again, you're just going to pop it in the oven and let it roast, but it's so nice to just kind of snack on, and you can bring it with you. Different places. Edamame is a soy-based product, obviously it is soy, and it is a complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids. So not only keeps you fuller for longer, so protein keeps you satiated, so your blood sugar levels aren't spiking and then dropping. But it also contains all the 9 essential amino acids that your body requires. But also, if you're going through chemotherapy, you do need to up your protein intake. So this would be a great to-go snack to keep on hand with you if you're at those medical appointments. Okay, this stuff out of the way here. La, la, la. Okay, wonderful. And always, always, always keep a clean workspace. Okay, next up. So spicy roasted edamame. I think you'll like this one. Okay. My son does. Okay, great. So we want a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Oven preheated to 375. Check, we've got those things. And then we've got edamame. So I'm gonna make a half recipe. So this recipe calls for 3 cups. We're gonna do 1.5 cups. So I've got edamame there, it's shelled. Make sure that it's shelled. Okay. And sesame oil, you can use dark, you can use light, whatever you have, and it's about 1/2 tablespoon. Great. Sesame oil also has a high smoke point, which is great, and also has that really nice deep, rich sesame seed flavor. So that's gonna add a lot of flavor to our edamame. Next up, ground ginger. You can omit this if you don't like ginger, but the ground ginger kind of gives it another oomph of flavor without added fat, salt, or sugar. And then a little bit of cayenne, also optional. I'm just going to put a tiny pinch because my son will probably be eating this. Okay, cool. And then a little bit of sea salt, so 1/4 teaspoon. Great, and then we mix, mix, mix. Mix until they're completely coated. Okay, you can see that. And then evenly distribute them onto a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. So I just used frozen, shelled edamame. I let them thaw for a little bit before we started this recipe. You can shell them yourself if you like to, but you can. It's just great to use a convenience food, and they take all the work out of it for you. Okay, there you go. We're gonna pop those in the oven as well, 375 for about 30 minutes. Okay. sensation clear. Okay. Clear and clean. Cool. Great, that was easy peasy, right? You could also do that with other legumes. So things like chickpeas, black beans, and you can get creative with the oils, you can get creative with the spices. And then once they come out, you'll see them, they're dry, they're crispy, they're crunchy. You want to make sure that they fully cool before you put them into any sort of container. And I usually use a resealable container. Okay, next up is one of my all-time favorite recipes. This reminds me of my childhood. My dad used to make a version of this when I was a kid. This is called the Artichoke mushroom chowder, and it is perfect comfort food, particularly for chilly weather. And it's also very satiating, satisfying, and it's just really, yeah, warm and cozy. It's like a big hug. Okay, cool. So it has what you think in it, artichokes and mushrooms, but there's other things as well that kind of make it comforting, like potatoes and carrots and celery, and thyme, which are all kind of, yeah, nice comfort, cozy foods. Okay, so we're gonna turn our burner on to a medium heat. So we'll get that going. While that's going, I'm gonna chop ingredients, okay? So, it's our grapeseed oil, so I'll do onions. The recipe calls for 1 large onion. So I've got 2 small ones here. And it's always a good idea to keep a bowl on hand to collect all of your scraps, but particularly if you like to save your scraps for stock, which I do, so making sure that all of your ingredients are clean first and foremost, and then you can save it for stock, specifically onions, carrots, celery, garlic skins, leeks, the white part of leeks, you know, stems, that sort of stuff. Dark leafy greens are not great for stock, so don't add those. But yeah, if I'm not using it right away, I'll just toss it in the freezer, and when I do want to make stock, I'll take it out and then put it with a big pot of water, put it in a big pot of water, bring it to a boil, let it simmer for about half an hour to 45 minutes, and then strain it. And you've got some low sodium homemade stock that's super nutrient dense and flavorful, and you know what's in it. I usually pop in a bay leaf, some thyme, parsley sprig, black peppercorns if I have them on hand. And it saves you money too. The 1 carton can be upwards to, you know, $5 or $6. And you're minimizing food waste also. Great, so onions as an allium-rich vegetable. So again, as I said, one of the ones you want to be consuming on the regular. A great part of an anti-cancer diet. Okay, so see how this is going. It's heating up slowly. Okay, so you notice, cut it in half. I kept the roots intact, peeled the skin off. Now I'm going to chop without cutting through the root. You can see I've left the root intact. And then going through it kind of horizontally, and then tip to heel using my pinching grasp. And then same thing on the other side. We'll save that for stock. Refer to onions, garlic, ginger as flavor country. They add so much flavor to your foods. So it's always a good way to start with the base of you know, soups and stews. Okay, so this guy should be heated up. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, so grapeseed oil, about 2 teaspoons. Okay, we'll just give it a minute to the oil to heat through. We don't want our onions to be sticking to the pot, and so we wait for the pot to heat up before we add the oil so that they don't stick. Okay, these onions are very potent. Some good tips: if your onions are very stinky and make you cry, you could be washing your knife in between cuts with cold water. You could wear some goggles. You could soak them in ice cold water before you cut them. Whatever works for you. I don't mind shedding a few tears now and then. Okay, next up, my absolute all-time favorite, mushrooms, which are also an amazing component of an anti-cancer diet. Oyster mushrooms, they're my favorite. They're very similar, have a very similar seafoody kind of texture. So yeah, it's very similar texture to seafood. So, you can hear that going. Great. You can see that. Perfect. And the oyster mushrooms are great because you can actually just tear them. And that gives you that seafood texture. So this is reminiscent of the clam chowder my dad used to make when I was a little girl. And if you don't have oyster mushrooms, that's okay. You can use other mushrooms. Anything you want, really. Shiitake would work. Make sure you take the stems off. You can save those for stock as well. You know, cremini, white, whatever you have on hand or whatever is accessible to you. I do like the texture of the oyster mushrooms though. And king oyster mushrooms you can also use, but they don't necessarily have the same texture as the regular oyster mushrooms. La 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 la. This is another job for a 4-year-old, which I have one of those. So they like to tear. It's a good job. Keep their little fingers busy. Great. Cool. Okay, the rest of those are good. And then this one, perfect. Okay, get that out of the way. And then next up, celery. Adds a nice crunch, a nice texture, but a nice overall flavor to the dish. Where did you go? There you are, stock. Okay. Yeah, and again, save all of this stuff for stock. Next up, I'm going to hold off the onions and mushrooms are not quite brown enough yet. So you want to get them a little bit of color on them before we add in the celery and carrots. So again, saving the carrots for stock. You can see what I'm doing here. I cut the ends off. I do not peel my celery or carrots. I like that additional fiber and that additional nutrients that are present in the vegetables. Just make sure that you're scrubbing them very well. Okay? Easier without having to peel them, but again, just making sure they're clean. Great. Pop that in. I'm actually going to give you a peek, because why not? See how it's going. See that there. Great. So you can see how much the mushrooms shrink as they're cooking. Okay, great. While that's happening, we're going to get our potato action going, our garlic action going. Almost lost my time here. Almost lost the time. Lost track of my time. Okay. Great. So, garlic. Again, an allium vegetable, so you want to get that into you as much as possible. Garlic in particular also contains allicin, which is a powerful antioxidant, which has been shown to be a very good component of an anti-cancer diet. So So what I'm doing is I'm taking the tips off. Again, it's clean, I'm saving it for stock. And what I'm gonna do, laying it lengthwise, I'm gonna give it a little smash with my knife. The back of my knife, make sure that obviously I'm not doing it with the point of your knife. And then same thing. And what I would do, if I had a few extra minutes, I would set this aside for 5 to 7 minutes, and that just makes the allicin more predominant in the garlic. And the smashing is a critical step for that as well, because it releases the allicin. Great, and you could add more garlic if you wanted. This recipe just calls for 2 cloves, but you could add as much as you like to it. And again, adds flavor without added fat, salt, or sugar. And I should say unhealthy fats, because we want those good healthy fats that we've been talking about. So the monounsaturated fatty acids and the polyunsaturated fatty acids. So monounsaturated would be things that are liquid at room temperature. So the grapeseed oil, the avocado oil, those are monounsaturated fatty acids. And then polyunsaturated fatty acids, generally liquid at room temperature, and those include things like flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts, that sort of stuff. Okay, get that going. And now we're going to dice our potatoes. So it's not a chowder unless you've added either seafood or potatoes. So we've got our potatoes going here, and we're just doing a nice little dice. I tend to do them a little bit smaller so they're kind of bite-sized, so you can kind of get a little bit of everything on your spoon. Also, it cooks faster too. So this recipe calls for 1 large potato. I've got 3 small ones. Again, skins are on. You can take them off if you like. As I said, I do like that extra fiber and extra nutrients that are present in the skins. Just make sure they are clean, clean, clean. Potatoes are very rich in potassium, which is good, helps you stay hydrated. Also good for your heart if it's not in excess. Of me chopping today. That's okay. Okay, great. Now I'll add that. We've got the garlic in there. Oh my gosh, it's starting to smell so nice. I wish you could smell it. In person, one day we will do it together. Okay. Potatoes in. I've probably made this chowder 4 times already this season. It is one of my all-time favorites. Okay, next up we've got the potatoes, and we're going to add our liquid so that helps to cook the potatoes. Okay, so I've got this is just unsweetened milk. Mine is unsweetened soy milk. Again, I like soy because it's a complete protein, and it is actually a good component of an anti-cancer diet. So do a little bit of research. I don't have a ton of time to talk about soy in particular, but do some research. Soy is a very good component of an anti-cancer diet, aside from all the negative hype that it's gotten many years ago. So there's new research that shows that soy, it's a complete protein, so it's great in that sense, but also has been shown if consumed regularly over a lifetime, it can actually minimize reduce the risk of both breast and prostate cancer. Okay, but with anything, you're not overdoing it. You're not eating it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all your snacks, and you know, right before bed. You're not over consuming it, and you're not consuming it in isolate form, in very concentrated form. You're consuming it in a whole food kind of form. So things like edamame, minimally processed tofu, not the super hyper processed, you know, burgers and fake meat and stuff like that. That's okay once in a while, but not something that you would want to be consuming daily. Okay. All right. Now we've got some coconut milk. So again, unsweetened, high fat. This is in substitute of things like cream and butter. So adds like a very nice mouthfeel. You could just use an unsweetened milk there if you wanted. I just really like the texture of the coconut milk. Okay, and then next up we have our artichokes. Artichokes contain inulin fiber, which is a prebiotic which helps with the growth of the already existing probiotics in your gastrointestinal system. So when you consume a prebiotic, it essentially helps the bacteria that are already in your gut flourish, and that helps with digestion. That helps with supporting your immune function. It also helps with the absorption of vitamins and minerals, which is very important, particularly when you're going through cancer treatment. You want to get all those vitamins and minerals. You want to make sure you get them into you because every little bit helps, right? You need that energy. You need those nutrients to get through. Okay, and then I'm going to add thyme. So the recipe calls for dried thyme. I'm just going to add some sprigs of fresh thyme while it's cooking, and then I'll pick them out after. Just make sure you're not eating that. Taking a bite of the thyme sprig. Not nice. Okay, and at this point we can turn it up because we want it to come to a boil. So I mentioned I've taken all those scraps from a previous stew that I was making the other day, and I made my own homemade veg stock. So there it is. We're adding 4 cups, so a liter. Okay, and then we're going to bring that to a boil and then bring it back down to a simmer. Okay, in the meantime, we will get our parsley or our garnish going here. You could also, the recipe also calls for adding dulse flakes here, which would add a kind of seafood taste to it. I'm going to omit it. I do have some, but I'm going to omit it because my son will be eating it. So it's not his favorite flavor. The fishiness isn't necessarily his favorite flavor in a chowder. So I'm going to omit it, but it does call for adding some dulse flakes, which you could find at your local health food store. You can find them online. Honestly, a lot of grocery stores even carry it now as well. So that's an option as well. I'm going to leave it out for us. Alrighty, parsley. Parsley is classified as a leafy green, so check, we got that in there. You could also add sweet potatoes to this chowder too, thinking of things we need to get every day, an orange vegetable. You could add that in as well too, in lieu of the potatoes or with the white potatoes. Okay, so this has been washed. I like to store my herbs. As soon as I get them, I wash them and then I wrap them in a clean towel or paper towel, and then I store them in the fridge in a resealable bag, and then they last much, 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 much longer. Okay, oops, and I forgot a little bit of salt too. So we're gonna put that in as well. So it's about half a teaspoon for this recipe. Get that in there. And we will stir. So bringing this up again to a boil and then simmer. So I'm going to cover it to help get things going. In the meantime, we're going to chop, 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 chop. So again, leafy greens contain all sorts of nutrients, folate, iron, also fiber, obviously, and they add such a punch of flavor. So again, adding flavor without added salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats. Parsley also is just so fresh. It just enhances the flavors that are already present in the dish that you're making. I like flat leaf, but you could go curly parsley. And parsley is something that you can chop kind of in advance. It doesn't bruise as easily as, say, cilantro. And then you just put this aside and save it for garnish. So we will get a little bowl here. Great. And we'll set that aside. And we'll clean up our station again. Yeah, so we want to try and focus on as many functional foods as we possibly can. So pro and prebiotics. Probiotics obviously would be things like kimchi, miso, anything that's fermented. Sauerkraut would be another one. Tempeh. And then prebiotics would be things like onions, garlic, chicory root, asparagus, whole grains are prebiotics as well. So getting those into us as much as possible. And then, as I said, any orange vegetables because of the beta carotene that's present is also very important to get into daily. You know, there's a bunch of specific functional foods that are really great for an anti-cancer diet. You can find a laundry list of them on the Gilda's Club website, so gildasclubtoronto.org, and you go to a community guide to cancer nutrition. It's a free nutrition guide that I have compiled with some dietitians, some you know, people who are in the cancer care realm. We've done a great deal of research so that you can check that out, and it's there. You don't have to, you know, do your research yourself. It's just all in one place, a concise guide on what to consume for cancer prevention, what to consume during treatment, and what to consume to prevent reoccurrence. Because a diet that's good for cancer prevention is also great for preventing reoccurrence of cancer as well. There are some things obviously during treatment that you want to be focusing on. As I mentioned, protein is something. Iron is another one as well, so making sure you're eating iron-rich food. So I always say the beans and the greens, get those into you as much as possible, coupled with a vitamin C-rich food. So things like citrus, strawberries, raw red pepper, that sort of stuff together will help with the bioavailability of the iron that's present in those foods. So yeah, beans and greens are very important, as well as protein during treatment. So what's great about the edamame is it's a complete protein, but it also does contain things like folate and iron, which are important during treatment. Okay, cool. So let's clean this up, get this out of the way, and we'll set the stage for all of our stuff. We've got about 5 more minutes left on the cake and the edamame. So I'll be right back. Pulling out the fine china for you today. Great. So the edamame is a great thing you can just leave out and people can munch on it. Or you can, as I said, take it with you, put it in like a resealable, reusable bag or container, and that's great to have on hand. And the soup is great if you make it on a Sunday. It'll last until Thursday, or if you're not going to eat it within 3 or 4 days, it's freezable as well, and you can keep it in your freezer for up to 3 months. Okay, and sometimes it's good, especially if you live alone, you can freeze it into individual portion containers, and then just take it out maybe a day or 2 before, and it can thaw in the fridge, and then you just heat it up, and then add your parsley at the end. So that was one thing. If you are freezing it, any greens I would leave out, okay, because they'll actually wilt and not be as nice. It'll be fine, it just wouldn't be as nice in terms of texture and taste. Okay, let's check on this guy. How you doing, Chowder? Ooh, nice, you can see that steam coming in. Looks beautiful. And I am going to tilt it for you so that you can see it. So it just reminds me of my childhood so much. I love it. And I do make it for my dad, and he does like it, although he says it's not as good as his. Can you see that? Here, let me bring it a little bit closer there. Kind of see. And I will obviously spoon some up once it's ready. Kind of see that. And what I'll do this as well. You can kind of see. And it's a really pretty color. It's really nice too if you do add the sweet potatoes. Adds even more color, but the carrots add enough orange. Okay, cover this back up for the time being. And I'm gonna grab the edamame. Oh yeah. Awesome. And the artichoke. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Let me just get organized here. The best thing about using parchment, obviously cleanup is easier, but when you're doing something like this, you're able to just kind of pick it up, and then voila, dump her in there. Okay, so that's good. We'll get rid of that. Ooh, while I'm over here, I do want to show you. This was kind of my leftover stock, so you can see I threw a whole onion in there actually. I've got a lot of little onions that need to be used up. And celery, garlic skins, there's a bay leaf in there, some thyme, parsley sprig. Okay. You see the nice color, nice golden brown color. Isn't that beautiful? Cool, check, snack, check. Okay, now we'll grab the cake. One thing I do like to do with, if I'm not making the glaze or the streusel part, I do like to put just a little drizzle of maple syrup. So I can do that on the top there. You could also sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar or something on top. I just prefer the taste of maple syrup. It doesn't spike your blood sugar levels as quickly. It still does if it's not partnered with, say, a protein or a fiber. See how beautiful that is. Oh my gosh. Love, 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 love. You can see the hazelnuts are all toasted and yummy. This guy's still working away. Cool. Obviously, you would let this cool before trying to take it out. I'm not going to do that right now because I want you to see it. But you would let this cool for, half an hour to 45 minutes. This is great with, obviously, ice cream. If it's breakfast, you can pair it with yogurt. It'd be really nice and yummy. Okay. So it's much more difficult to get out when it's still warm, obviously. Any baker will tell you that. But yeah, you could make this ahead if you were having, a holiday brunch or something like that. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so moist. Oh my goodness. Yum. Well, let's get that going there. Do a little drizzle. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Get this out of the way here. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, and now, last but not least, the chowder. Definitely not least is my favorite. Okay. This would be a great chowder to pair with a really good grainy whole grain bread. Make sure you get lots and lots of the goodies, especially the mushrooms. Perfect. Right, here we go. A little bit more, I think. Yum. Beautiful. Okay, and then parsley to garnish for flavor and to kind of give it a pop of color as well. Okay, we did it. Okay, wonderful. So there you have it, 3 very easy recipes that are warm and cozy and will get you through those winter months. They're also really great to make ahead as well. So definitely try them out. Yeah, for your own good or make them for a friend or a loved one. Yeah, and just, you know, be good to yourself. And there's my timer. My time is up. Thank you so much for joining me, and take very good care.